अच्छा एटा गोटे कोन आसला माने क्लिक करिया मु क्लिक कर देली स्टार्ट वेबिनार गोटे कोन रेकॉर्डिंग
It's okay, sir. It's okay, sir. Actually, the
Okay.
attendees will be joining now.
Okay,
They're
okay.
supposed to start at 8:30. It's okay, sir.
Okay.
Joyita.
Yes, sir.
Hello, Joyita.
Yes, sir.
Nagarushan sir has texted in WhatsApp group that he has not received the email link. Probably it has landed up in spam. Probably it has landed up in spam or updates, because I got it in updates, not in primary mail.
I'm just sending him the mail right now.
Yeah, and I'm making a call to him. Good evening, sir.
सुश्रुत भाई अपन हॉस्पिटल जाओ ना
ना हमर बा हॉस्पिटल मझरे हॉस्पिटल बंद हे गेला कारण हॉस्पिटल रे गोटे पेशेंट न जणे करी तार सिजरियन हे गेला तापर से जणैला जे से पॉजिटिव थिला से कोड तक छाड़ दै जने माने विकल कर दै जने रात रे पळे आसला पेशेंट सकाळ सकाळ सिजरियन तो जमा पड़ला तापर हमर माने समस्त टेस्ट लड़ो दीदी मोर पीडियाट्रिक दीदी पॉजिटिव एपटे पुणी मोर भाई रो मिसेस से जे हाईटेक रे अछि भाई को असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर मोदी भाई सी भी पॉजिटिव हे गेला तेणु मते काइंड ऑफ 15 दिन होम क्वारंटाइन रहे पड़ला जुलाई 1 रु जुलाई 15 तापर पुणी हम हॉस्पिटल रे से भीतर बाहर गेला मो दीदी पॉजिटिव हे गेला मु बंद कर देली जाउनी मा सत्य जीवा बंद कर देजे पेशेंट भी होना दी मु तो इंडोर मोर बहुत कम इंडोर तो रखु न देली खाली न्यूबॉर्न जा इंडोर तो गोटे दिटा पेशेंट पाई मु बंद कर देछि से मते कहले छि जा दरकार एटी क्लिनिक पठे दो मु क्लिनिक करूछि 9 टू 12:31 अराउंड कर दोछि टिके लंबा कर दोछि जे आसला से गोटे टाइम आ ये मेनली वैक्सीनेशन न्यूबॉर्न गोटे दिटा एमति आज जोडा आसला बैटरी मिल दिछि एमति सेफ पेशेंट हले देखुछि नहला जो अलाउ करलो आज तथापि गोटे पेशेंट फोन
हमर एजी सिचुएशन हमर एजी बहुत खराब
अच्छा माने भुवनेश्वर भी तो गुडे गुडे बाहर
से जो हां बाहर से जय प्रकाश हॉस्पिटल जोटा नोआ रखछि अच्छा मल्टी स्पेशलिस्ट हॉस्पिटल से अच्छा तो सेटा हमर ऑलमोस्ट तंगर 4th फ्लोर तक कोविड हॉस्पिटल कर दी छी अच्छा तो तंकर आधा डॉक्टर्स सुन पॉजिटिव है ओहो बी अछि अच्छा बाकी सब सिम्टोमेटिक छथि अच्छा किसान भी कोन नांती बाहर को पूरा चुपचाप करछथि
देवेंद्र
सेटा होछि प्रॉब्लम आ
देवेंद्र
चाहूनी किसी जणे अपन आगे सर
काइंडली आस्क भोया सर टू जॉइन
हां भोया सर काइंड जॉइन करना दे ऑलमोस्ट टाइम हो गेला हां
Sir, I'm showing a very short video of LearnIt, sir.
Yeah. Nagarushan sir joined. Good evening, sir.
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. I think I joined. Thank you.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah. Good evening, Dr. Sethi. Am I audible clearly?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Very
yes,
much.
Sir.
Bhuya sir joined. Sir, namaskar sir. Good evening.
Namaste. I think.
Sir, namaskar. Sir, namaskar.
Thank you and welcome, sir.
नमस्कार ଆପଣ ଖାଲି ଆସୁଛନ୍ତି
Because these technical issues, they can upset you anytime.
सर नमस्कार
हाँ नमस्कार मु कहीं स्क्रीन रे आसुनी समस्त है तो
सर
you are
आश्चर्य
in the full screen
We are able to see you, sir.
सर आपण देखु छी
thank you
Yeah.
Joyita, should we take a buffer time of 5 minutes?
Sir, whatever you want.
Hello?
Yes, sir. Sir, should I stop the sharing or should I continue, sir?
continue for another 5 minutes maybe.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Sure, sir. Thank you, sir.
Our Honorable President, IAP National Respiratory Chapter, Jagdish sir has joined.
Oh,
Jagdish
excellent.
Kinappa sir. Good evening, sir.
I messaged him today morning. He said he will join.
Yeah, even Subbu bhai will join. Sir.
Correct. Subbu
Yeah,
will
he
be
has
there
texted me.
everywhere, no?
Omnipresent.
Omnipresent.
Our secretary, Dr. Sabath, has joined and wishing good evening to all the panelists.
Oh, thank you so much. We
Thank you.
reciprocate.
बड़ भाई नमस्कार.
Hello. Thank you, Jagdish. No, I understand. Yeah. Thanks so much. Thanks for being there. That's most important. I even requested Kasi sir.
डॉक्टर सेठी डॉक्टर प्रसन्न साहब को टिके फोन करो तो ना
ताऊ କହିଥିଲି sir हां
कोई तरह ना
हां
इज नॉट लॉग्ड इन
फर्स्ट रजिस्ट्रेशन कर ଦେଇଛନ୍ତି
हां हां ना मत भी କହିतली
Joyita.
Yes, sir.
Now it is 8:31. In another 4 minutes we can start. The permission
Yes,
of the
sir.
chairman.
Sure, sir.
Yeah.
How many? I think around 20, 25 participants.
Uh,
Now we
More
are
than that,
already
around
40.
40.
40. That's good then.
Our honorable past president IAP Pramod Jog sir has joined.
Good.
Good evening, sir.
Gautam Ghosh sir has joined from West Bengal.
Oh, so it's a all India meet.
For a all India figure.
Oh. Sir, when you are in PGI, when you are in PGI, you had
Yeah.
Dr. Walia Saab, sir.
Yeah, he was the professor HOD.
I have very fond memories about writing to him, though I was not a student. Which year, sir, you graduated?
I passed out from PGI in 1978 December.
Oh, I see.
When I was 2 years old.
Dr. Arvind
So
joined
sorry, so
later,
sweet.
probably by that time you had left.
We have another senior esteemed delegate in the audience, Dr. Raj Tilak from Kanpur.
Oh, a
Good
good
evening,
friend.
sir. Yeah.
So I am getting jittery. All the stalwarts are there.
No, sir, everybody is jittery that what cardinal sin sir is going to point out.
if I am not exaggerating, sir, today is Purnami.
Correct.
And the moon is right here. So all the stars will be around it.
Correct. And you have chosen a very auspicious day. Because from tomorrow it is Pitru Paksha, no? Today is the auspicious.
Yeah, sir. True, sir. Sir, Bhuya sir.
Yes.
ଆପଣଙ୍କ sir permission ହେଲା order ହେଲେ it will start. Whenever you say yes.
So we can start?
Yes, it's now 50. We can start.
Yeah, Dr. Sethi. Dr. Sethi will be the opening batsman. I think how many participants we have got till now?
50.
50 is good enough. Good.
50 and it's rising.
Okay. We can start then.
50. Sir. Sir. Thank you, sir. Good evening and very warm welcome to all the guests, Dr. N.P. Modi sir, Dr. B.K. sir,
So Sethi, you are not audible, it is breaking.
And,
not audible
to all
properly.
of you. Is it okay now, sir? Is it okay, sir?
Yeah.
Audible?
Yes, now
Now it is better.
Okay, sir. Good evening to all and a very warm welcome to all of you, and particularly our esteemed panelists, Dr. N.P. Modi sir is a moderator, Dr. B.K. sir, chairperson, and Susu is the co-chairperson, and our esteemed guest speaker, Dr. Sasidhara Rao Nagabhusan sir. Welcome to all of you to this webinar. And also I welcome all the audience watching this webinar throughout India. And I hope today's speaker will take them to a new level. And for the first time, IAP Sundargarh District Branch, in association with IAP Odisha State Branch, is organizing a webinar, that is the state race webinar. And I hope through this we can set example that except Cuttack, Bhubaneswar and Khurda branch, all other districts also can organize such a webinar. and I personally grateful to our President, State President, Dr. Prasanna Kumar Sahu, for guiding and encouraging us to organize the webinar. And also, I thankful Dr. N.P. Modi sir. He is my teacher, mentor, and big brother, who is always there to help me and also helping this organizing this webinar. And as you know, in this pandemic, there is a flood of webinar. And always in every webinar, we get to know what to learn and what is right and what should we do. Nowhere I think there is any topic what we must not do. And that should also we learn. And today's topic is 5 cardinal sins in respiratory illness. And I think our esteemed speaker, Dr. Nagabhushan Rai sir, will take all of us to a journey will our common mistakes during our practice. That is, we knowingly doing the unknown things or common things. And with this, I will start the webinar. And let me first introduce our chairperson, Dr. B.K. Bhuiyan sir. I am sharing the slide. Huh? Welcome, Dr. B.K. Bhuiyan sir. He is the senior pediatrician in Rourkela. He has done his MD in PGI Chandigarh 1978. I think this is the 1978 year is the year when I was born. And from 1979 to 1989, he has joined the Ispat General Hospital as a senior pediatrician and neonatalist. From then onwards, he started his practice in Rourkela and established many special care neonatal unit in IGH and other nursing homes in Rourkela. He was a member of CIAP 2 times, 2006-07 and 2008. He is also the recipient of Pioneer in Pediatric Award from East Zone Pediatrics 2006 and also the Sisu Visheshagya Shiromani Award in 2008. The field of interest is neonatology and general medicine. And here is also, he is always ready to guide me whenever I need. Now I hand over Dr. B.K. Bhuiyan sir to start the session.
Thank you, Dr. Sethi, for your kind introduction. Dr. Sethi is a very young, hardworking and dynamic president. I think our branch is very lucky to have a president like him. He is always dynamic and I think is hardworking. I welcome everybody in the panel as well as all the audience who are logged in, especially Dr. P.K. Sahu, our president state branch is just logged in. Thank you, Dr. Sahu. I welcome Dr. Nagabhushan from Karnataka. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation. I think he is one of the finest pediatrician in the field of pediatric respiratory medicine, and he will be telling us about the 5 sins that we commit in respiratory management. I again thank you profusely for sharing your time and agreeing to speak on this difficult subject. I also welcome Dr. Susruth, my co-chairperson, and Professor Modi, the coordinator. I think both these persons do not need any introduction because in this, as Dr. Sethi told, in the flood of webinars that we are seeing, every day we see the face of Dr. Modi and Dr. Susruth. Whether it is a state seminar, webinar, or it is a national webinar. So I will not venture to introduce them, rather it will be futile to introduce them. I will now request Dr. Susruth Before that, I will declare this webinar as open, or I inaugurate this webinar. I request Dr. Susruth to introduce our chief speaker, and this will be then the dais will be taken over by Professor Modi, who will be coordinating this or moderating this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bhuiyan, sir. I'm really honored to be a part of this esteemed panel, and I'm so happy that even my secretary, Dr. P.K. Sawant sir, and my president, Dr. Sahu sir, is in the attendance, and still a youngster is given a chance to share the limelight with so much of esteemed panel for today. I must congratulate Dr. Devendra Sethi for organizing nicely this webinar on behalf of IIP Sundargarh chapter, and this is a big step from a small chapter and a new infant chapter to take such a big step with the help of Dr. Narayan Modi sir. So as a practitioner, sir, I must admit that asthma and allergy, though it's a very common scenario in our clinic, but I always consider them as Mahabharat Yudh, and I am the one who is entering the Chakravyuh without knowing how to come out of it. It's very easy to start some anti-allergic medicine or some inhaler, but it's very difficult how to come out of it. How many sins I have committed, I don't know. Today, I'm so excited that such a great speaker is among us who will guide us through 5 cardinal sins. Maybe all my sins will be less by 5 from today's lecture. And I am really privileged to introduce a national, international level speaker like Dr. S. Nagabhushan sir, who is a visiting professor at Rainbow Children's Hospital, Bangalore. He was President IIP Respiratory Chapter Karnataka from 2005 to 2006, Organizing Secretary Respicon 2005. Asthma Training Module, the popular ATM, was designed by him and his team from 2007 to 2012, again 2019 and 2020. So the present module is the gift of Nagabhushan sir, and he has he has been the editor-in-chief for Asthma by Consensus 2011 and 2019 chapter. Well, this is few of the glimpses of his illustrious career. What his fans, especially Dr. Modi, has already told me that when Nagabhushan sir speaks about respiratory chapter and allergy, it is like poetry in motion. He's such a brilliant speaker and speaks from his heart, and such a subject which is made easy by his numerous lectures. I am happy and privileged that this is probably my 3rd or 4th lecture I am attending from sir. So without any delay, let me hand over to Dr. Modi sir to moderate the session and start the scientific deliberation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, dear Susruth. And I must thank at the outset the esteemed guest speaker, Dr. Nagabhushan, who took some time to actually accept the invite from Odisha. He said, Dr. Modi, please allow me some time, a couple of days to think over this, and I will revert. So very cordially and in a very accepting way, he reverted. He said, yes, okay, we will go ahead with this program. I must thank him. We are grateful, sir. I must thank IIP State Odisha, P.K. Sahu sir, who has guided us all through this preparation towards this webinar. B.K. Bhuiyan sir, and dear Dr. Devendra Sethi, and my dear Susruth, to actually have made it happen. And I welcome all the attendees and some of the real stalwarts, real superstars of IIP, the whole of the country. Without much ado, it's over to you, sir, Dr. S. Nagabhushan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Modi, for that very kind introduction. And I am very happy to have with us on the webinar the President of Orissa IIP, Dr. Sahu, Dr. Bhuiyan, the our co-chairperson, and of course my good friend Dr. Narendra Modi. Dr. Narayan Prasad Modi is as popular as the Prime Minister. Now, when Dr. Modi called me to say 5 cardinal sins in pediatric respiratory illness, I was a little not so very comfortable, because those words sin I had first thought were signs, S-I-G-N-S. And Dr. Modi corrected me to say it is not sign, it is sins. So I took some time to say yes, because this was a very challenging topic. And I should share with you that this gave me some sleepless nights before I accepted. Now we are with you, and let us see how we could understand this challenging topic given to me, to see that you and me become better pediatricians by tomorrow. Now, what would be the focus areas of the 5 sins today? The first focus area would be history we take from every patient. The second focus area would be our sins during clinical examination. The third focus area could be investigations and their limitations. The fourth very vital area is the area of monitoring a patient. And the fifth area, not so much focused in many arena, and that is ethics. Now let us go through each one of them. I am not going to discuss theory. We will have our run through the mill of cases that I would have seen in the last 3 decades of practicing pediatric respiratory medicine. I would also like to share with you that the principles that we elucidate in the field of pediatric respiratory medicine is equally applicable to any other subspecialty of pediatrics. Now let us look at history. Now this is a slide which all of you could answer. Now you can start giving your answers. You can click your mobile and say how much would history contribute, how much would clinical examination contribute, and how much would investigations contribute. You are seeing that history has been given the 60%, clinical examination 20%, and all of the above is shown as 20%. I think that is something that all of us would agree, because history forms a very, very important part of our clinical diagnosis. Now let us look at this case scenario. This was a 6-year-old child brought in with history of inattention in school and dropping scholastic performances from the past few months. He was being treated for frequent colds in the recent past. He had disturbed sleep of late, which his mother told us. He snored while sleeping. Now, the father told us that, doctor, I have put him to a new school. I have paid donation and I am paying more fees. This fellow is not even gaining as much marks as you would gain in the previous school. This fellow is lazy. And the mother was feeling bad about what the father said. And when she came alone next time, she said, doctor, this boy is not lazy. He is trying to do his best, because I find him not sleeping well at night, and maybe that may be the reason. Ladies and gentlemen, we would make the first sin in our life when you get a child who has dropping scholastic performance, inattention, etc. not to ask about the quality and timing of a sleep of every child. Unlike adults, children tend to become inattentive and hyperactive during the day if they do not get good quality sleep, and therefore they will not be able to focus in school. They may have subtle hearing loss because of fluid in the middle ear. They may not hear what the teacher says, and that may make it disruptive. We took a detailed sleep history in this child. We found that this child had an obstructive airway problem. A simple solution like adenotonsillectomy helped this child to a very great extent. What can we do in clinical practice? Because you can't see the adenoids like you see the tonsils. Now, there are subtle ways in which you can make out the upper airway obstruction. These children snore during sleep, but the quality of snoring may not have any relationship to the obstructive problem. Meaning, a grossly snoring child may have less obstruction, a soft snoring child may have more obstruction. You could do a tuning fork test to make out hearing loss, which could be conductive hearing loss. And you could do a spatula test. Take a steel spatula, keep it under the nostrils and see whether humidity forms equally from both the nostrils. And you can also do a tympanogram to make sure that he has got a hearing loss. The most important aspect would be to take a sleep history, and that helped this child. And the father came back to say, "Sir, I was sorry, my child was so good, but he had a problem and now he is doing very well in school." So from tomorrow, let us not make the first sin of not taking a sleep history in every child who has some unusual problems or very vague problems, and most often we will be rewarded. It is so surprising that parents have so much to say if you ask, and it is we who don't ask about the sleep history and then they don't tell it to us. Both the doctors were my family friends. Their daughter and my daughter were almost of the same age. They called us at 11 p.m. one day and they told, "You have to help us. Our daughter has restrictive lung disease. She got her PFT and it indicates restrictive lung disease. What should we do? What would be her future?" On phone at 11 p.m., I told both these doctor parents, "Look, your child cannot have restrictive lung disease. For the simple reason that you yourself told us last month your daughter went to Darjeeling and participated in the Himalayan trekking successfully. So if your daughter has climbed the Himalayas, how can she have restrictive lung disease?" And then they said, "What about the pulmonary function test?" She was a first year MBBS student. She did her pulmonary functions in the physiology lab, and then came the computer result which said she had restrictive lung disease. The simple reason was she had not blown enough and satisfactorily, and the computer did not recognize it. It gave away the value based on the numbers, and then it gave the result as restrictive lung disease. The second sin that we most of us do is to interpret an investigation without knowing the history of the particular child. So from next time, if you have a pulmonary function test report or any other report, make sure you have the adequate history before you even look at the report, which may mislead you. So history, gentlemen, is something that is very, very vital. And I'm sure both the doctor parents slept comfortably after our dialogue. She repeated her pulmonary function test the following week and got a normal report. Now, this adolescent was being treated for asthma. Every time he came with an exacerbation, the doctor treated the exacerbation and the child did well. But this time, the adolescent came with a very different look on his face. He said, "Doctor, this time my breathlessness looks different. I don't think it is my usual asthma." What will you say? Most of us will say, "Who are you to tell it? I know better. I have been treating you." But then, since this adolescent was insistent, the doctor took an X-ray. Now you can mark here where you think is the problem in this child. Your time starts now. Take your point, you touch the screen and it will mark where you think the abnormality is. If there is no abnormality you feel, don't mark it. You can start. You are seeing the chest X-ray on the screen. Please start pointing out. I'm waiting for the responses. Hello. I am in a meeting. I can't talk. Please don't call. Yes, I can see 2 responses. Yes, very good. Please continue. Some more responses, please. Yes, that was the second one. Yes, there's the third response. I can see the fourth. Good. That means the audience are very, very active. I can see the sixth one. Good. Oh, I can see one which is pointing outside the chest. Good. You can change your response if you want to. That provision is there. Good. You can now see that there is a dark area here. And this area is much more dark as compared to the other areas. This child had blown a pneumothorax. And that is why he was feeling that the asthma was a little different. He needed an intercostal drainage tube, and after that he got better. Ladies and gentlemen, it's always good to listen to the child and sometimes to his parents. Many times they feel something which they are suffering, which we have to give credence to. Had the doctor not given any credence to this child's words, he would have missed the pneumothorax and he would have treated the child with bronchodilators and the child would had worsened. So take the history of the child very seriously. And that is the pneumothorax. If Sherlock Holmes would have been here today in today's webinar, he would have said, "History, history, history, my dear Watson." And that speaks volumes of how much important history is in the practice of clinical medicine, more so in pediatrics, because sometimes we take history from the parents and grandparents. So taking an accurate history is very important. I always remember the dictum which Professor Amdekar says. He said, a mother always knows what to tell only if you know how to ask. And so it's our responsibility to ask such questions which the mother understands and gives us the correct answer, which will aid us in the diagnosis. Now let us go to clinical examination and the sins that we can do during clinical examination. This 3-year-old child came with history of recurrent respiratory infections, both upper and lower, and he was not gaining proper weight. So the parents were worried. They asked us, what are the possibilities? Now, if you were the treating doctor, how would you have assessed this child? This is the possibility. You could answer now. I have activated the link. Please answer. How many of you would take a detailed history? How many of you would do repeated, thorough clinical examination? How many of you would extensively investigate? How many of you would do growth monitoring? I have had 2 responses. I have 3 responses now. A few more, please. Changing from 17 to 33 to 50. Anybody for investigations? I think the percentages are changing good. That means the audience are very active. Well, there has been changing, like the share values, the numbers are changing from time to time. Any more, please? Yes, somebody took up investigations. Good. Extensive investigations, that too. Yes. Anybody for answer D? Any more answers, please? This is the chart that we did. And if you look at this chart, you will find that this child has not faltered in his growth at all, because he is there still within the brown line, which is above 80%. But what has happened is, within the brown line, this child has waxed and waned. You can see that this child had excellent growth until 6 months when the mother went off to work. 2 episodes of upper respiratory tract infections brought the weight down. He was put to daycare and he was bottle fed when he developed an LRI. What is important is, this child, though has waxing and waning of his growth has not gone beyond the 80th centile at all. So a simple charting of the child's growth and the growth velocity in a growth chart can give us enough clues to say whether you should investigate this child or not. And you look at his trend, the trend of the lines is always going up. It is neither flat nor is it coming down, except when he had an LRI, when it had flattened a little bit. So one of the sins that you and me should not commit from tomorrow is not to plot the growth chart. Whether the child comes for immunization or for an URI, please plot the growth of the child on this growth chart. How will this help? 80% of children in our practice don't need extensive investigations. They falter in their growth, and that too not below the 80th centile, because they get frequent infections. They don't need investigation. By the age of 3 or 4, they outgrow this tendency and they become normal. So doing extensive investigations is something that we can prevent by just charting the growth of this child. The second advantage would be that you can always reassure the parents that despite all this, your child is having a trend which is upwards in his growth. And parents are likely to believe us when we give evidence in the form of growth charts. So from tomorrow, if you are not charting the growth of any child who comes to you, please make it a point to measure the child's growth, at least the height and weight, and chart it. And that makes a huge treasure for the parents to preserve this growth chart. If somebody would have read David Marley's book, he says that the mothers would be crying excessively if they lost their child's growth chart because they thought it was their most wonderful possession about their child's health. Now let us look at this case scenario. This 2.5-year-old boy presented with repeated bilateral ear discharges associated with colds from 3 months of life. He has been treated with antibiotics on multiple occasions. He has been solely breastfed until 6 months of age. What would you focus on and what would be your inferences? One of the things that we could make out was that this boy did not have a tonsil. We often presume that children have tonsils and we miss out if they don't have a tonsil. So if a child who has got recurrent respiratory infections and does not have a tonsil, your diagnosis is always made. And in a 2.5-year-old, you would rather want to see the thymus, which is not there in this child. And these will give us enough clues to say that this child needs investigation. And these are red flag signs. Recurrent bilateral ear discharge, frequent use of antibiotics, recurrent LRI, these are red flag signs. The child is begging you, the child is requesting you to evaluate him for something much more sinister than the first child. And how can we do it? We can remember this acronym called SPUR given to us by Professor Andrew Bush. S stands for severe infection, P stands for persistent infection and failure of expected recovery. Unusual organisms would mean that this child needs to be investigated. Recurrent infections, which I elucidated. If you have a child who has a respiratory infection plus an extrapulmonary infection or other disease like arthropathy, a positive family history of unexplained death, infections or multisystem disease, these are children who need extensive investigation and they benefit from these investigations and therapy. And that's why this great physician, Hippocrates, said that a great part, I believe, of the art of medicine is the ability to observe. Leave nothing to chance. Combine contradictory observations and allow yourself enough time. How many times, ladies and gentlemen, we would have scratched our head and said, I would not have made this mistake had I spent a little more time taking history and observing that child, I would have arrived at the diagnosis. So please remember this Hippocratic word and then reduce the number of sins that you and I might make from tomorrow. Let us look at investigations. Somebody said, and they said it well, that use investigations as a mistress. And that is the place of investigation. Investigations help us to arrive at a diagnosis, provided we have taken adequate care and time to take proper history and do a thorough clinical examination. If you do not take a proper history and do not conduct a thorough clinical examination, investigation may mislead you rather than leading you towards appropriate treatment. Now, this was a 8-month-old male child weighing 7.2 kg. He was wheezing since 7 days. The wheezing was worse since last night, but this child, remember, was wheezing since the 6th month of age. He was on 3-drug AKT for a positive MANTU of 15 millimeters. This child was treated in the hospital and discharged after 14 days. Now that was the first X-ray which was taken. And when the child came back after a month, the mother said, "Kuch bhi farak nahi pada." The child was still breathless and was still wheezing. What will we do now? The hapless doctor took another X-ray. This is 1 month after the child was treated and went back. Still symptomatic. Remember the age of the child. The child started wheezing at the age of 6 months. He had recurrent wheezing, and this time his wheezing was unresponsive to medications given. Now, in your opinion, how many of you feel this X-ray is normal? How many of you feel he has problems on one side or both sides or none of the above? You can answer now. Please send your answers either from your laptop or from your mobile. Your time starts now. I have activated. Somebody says the X-ray is normal. How many of you would subscribe to this statement? Other answers, please. If you give your answers quickly, we can go ahead. Any other answers? If you text the number, you will get this on your screen. If you touch it, I will receive the response. Any more responses? I have one response which says chest X-ray is normal. Any other responses? Look at this X-ray. 1 month later, this child has bilateral hyperinflation. Look at the dooms of the diaphragm. They are flat. That means this child has something for hyperinflation. This sort of X-rays could sometimes be seen during the acute episode of bronchiolitis, but not a month later. And that made the physician think about this child, and this infant was investigated. The other rule that the physician followed was that if the child is less than 1 year, and if this child wheezes frequently, and most important, his response to treatment is unsatisfactory, think of diagnosis other than asthma, because infantile wheeze, unresponsive wheeze, and an X-ray like this should prompt us to think at some other diagnosis and not asthma. And they were right when they did the CT scan. You can see that there is a bronchogenic cyst which is sitting on top and narrowing the airway. So this child had an hyperinflation because that narrowing had caused a ball valve mechanism, and that caused hyperinflation of both the lungs. And this astute physician was able to attend to it. This child got operated and the child did well again. So it's not the X-ray but the eyes that see the X-ray makes the difference. If the child comes back to you symptomatic, please do not dismiss this child as something that is a long-standing same problem and increase your dose of medication. Rather, sit back, scratch your head, and probably you will arrive at the diagnosis. So correlate the investigation with the condition of the child. Now, this was a 10-year-old boy who was diagnosed to have right upper lobe pneumonia. He was started on amoxicillin by his GP. His chest X-ray confirmed the diagnosis. Once the GP took the X-ray, he investigated this child. He found that this child had leukocytosis, high ESR, and this child had a grossly positive Mantoux test, 16 millimeters with induration. He hurriedly called me and said, "Sir, please take over." And as the child came in, I saw this child jumping and coming into my room. This child was afebrile. This child was happy. He was active. The father looked worried because he was pointing towards the Mantoux test, and probably the GP had given him clues about the diagnosis. Now, when we saw this child was afebrile. He had minimal lung signs. He had responded to the correct dose of amoxicillin. It was very hard for me to convince the father that we will wait. The father wanted some other tests and treatment to be started. We waited for 2 weeks. The child did very well. We waited for a month. The child gained weight. So we dismissed the Mantoux test. Please remember that this Mantoux test was not warranted in this child at all because this child had a community-acquired pneumonia. Number two, the child was showing adequate and satisfactory response to amoxicillin. And three, at 10 years, it is more likely that a good number of children will be Mantoux positive without tuberculosis. They are called asymptomatic Mantoux positive children. The dictum here is that if you do a test which is unnecessary, you will confuse yourself as well as the parents. And the dictums when we do investigation are that do not order a test if it is not necessary. Do not order a test if you do not know how to interpret it, and treat the child and not the investigation report. And if we remember these three dictums when we investigate children, we will do much less sins in our clinical practice as we treat children from tomorrow. Now, this was a 2.5-year-old child, perfectly well 1 week ago. He had coryza for 7 days. He went to school normally 1 day prior to admission. And he at 3 p.m. was suddenly found to be acutely breathless at school. He progressively worsened over 8 hours. There was no history of trauma, no history of foreign body aspiration. When we took the history, he had a history of asthma, admitted 2 years back. Discharge summary said he had reactive airway disease. The chest X-ray at that time was reported normal. There was no family history. No other history was contributory. These were his vital signs. He had a gross tachypnea, tachycardia, plus a pulse of 190 and a blood pressure which was borderline. But look at the respiratory examination. Trachea was shifted to the right. The movements were decreased on the left side of the chest. He had dull note to percuss on the chest. He had decreased air entry. And then this was the X-ray. The attending pediatrician saw this X-ray and said, put in an intercostal drainage tube. This child is going to improve. And he said, this child has an acute onset pneumothorax. And once you drain it, this child is going to improve. The child had progressive distress. He was intubated and manual bagging was done. The assistant put a needle in the second left intercostal space. As the senior had said, air bubbled out, but with air, some whitish putty-like material was aspirated. The intercostal chest tube was inserted on the left side. There was a slight air leak. The column moved well. But in contrast to the expected significant improvement, there was no improvement at all. A repeat X-ray was taken. This is this repeat X-ray, and this is where you can see the intercostal drainage tube. And this made the treating pediatrician worried. If you were the treating pediatrician, what would you do? Here are your options. I will agree with management and insert another tube at a different place. Please start answering. I disagree. I will do a CT chest. I do not know. I will refer this child. I will call the pediatric surgeon to confirm the tube position. None of the above. Please start your answers. Which one would you choose? Excellent. Somebody says none of the above. Maybe a very astute clinician. Any other answers, please? You can start answering. Yes, we'll do a CT chest. Good. Yes, somebody says, two people say we'll do a CT chest. How many would like to insert another tube, please? And how many of you would like to refer? Yes. Any other answers? You can click yes. Good. Participants are very active and involved. Yes. Answer still flowing in. Good. Good. Any more answers? Yes. So many people are interested and answering. Good. Some more answers, please. Some more answers. Any more answers? Now go back to the history. This child was doing well. He went to school and at 3 p.m. he had an acute onset breathlessness. Please remember the dictum that if there is a pneumothorax, you should find a collapsed lung margin. You can't arrive at the diagnosis of pneumothorax if you don't see a collapsed lung border at all. And this X-ray does not show a collapsed lung border. Number 3, when the tube was put in, somebody got a white putty-like material. Why should you get a putty-like material when you put a tube in? Now, to make this long story short, the pediatric surgeon was called, and since the child had gross distress, the pediatric surgeon inserted a nasogastric tube and within few minutes this child got better. What this child had was a delayed diaphragmatic hernia, which can occur all of a sudden, and that was the enlarged stomach which was occupying the 3/4 of the left part of the chest, and the milk that this child had taken was the putty like material that this child aspirated. Now, if you can't correlate your history, your clinical examination with your investigative findings, one of the sins that most of us do is to insert an intercostal tube when it is not necessary. So the next time if you have an ambiguous case, please remember to correlate the history, your clinical findings, and then go into an invasive technique. Now, delayed diaphragmatic hernia can occur in many situations. For example, if you have a child who is predisposed to delayed diaphragmatic hernia, he takes a flight, and the changes in barometric pressures in the flight can cause a delayed diaphragmatic hernia. Some children have the habit of taking coke, and that could increase the intragastric pressure, and that could enlarge, and the weak diaphragm may give way, giving rise to this clinical situation. So please remember, the diagnosis of pneumothorax is not tenable if you don't see a collapsed lung border. The diagnosis of pneumothorax again is not tenable when you put in an intercostal drainage tube and the child does not immediately recover and respond. So please be careful when you do investigative interventions. One of the sins during the COVID era is not to protect ourselves adequately. A well-fitting N95 mask and a shield are the basic minimum protective equipment that you and me will need to treat patients. I can only share a very unfortunate experience of my own friend who had seen patients from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. with complete PPE. As he was about to leave, he had taken off his PPE. He was wearing only the mask. The last patient came in. And since he was in a hurry, he did not completely wear his PPE and examined this patient who turned out to be COVID positive. And my friend had to land up in the ICU. Though he had taken all the precautions from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., the only patient who came in the end when he was closing his consultation made the whole difference. So ladies and gentlemen, let us not make the sin of not protecting ourselves when we examine children. We now know that though children do not suffer from acute COVID, they can have the virus in their body. And the parents who come with the child may also be asymptomatic carriers. Insist on protecting yourself, insist on the parents and the older child about 2 years having a mask when they come to your clinic. If they don't have a mask, keep some mask and give it to them. It may be worthwhile to protect you and to protect yourself from people. Monitoring is a very important aspect of clinical management, and this case scenario will cogently bring home this point. This was a 7-year-old girl who was treated for Guillain-Barré syndrome in a private hospital. She was monitored, and then they found after 1 or 2 days that for no obvious reason, this girl developed an altered mental status. And they referred this girl to a major hospital, and the referring note said, this girl is maintaining oxygen saturation 96% in room air. Her other vitals were satisfactory. The referring doctor could not make out why this child was drowsy. He also did a GRBS, which was 80 milligrams. So her sugars were normal, her vitals were normal, her oxygen saturation was normal. So they did not know why she was drowsy, and therefore they thought of a referral. Now, this girl was in respiratory failure. Why? Because though her SpO2 was normal, her PCO2 was high because this girl had a neuromuscular disease. She could not breathe adequately. What we have to remember is that both hypoxia and hypercarbia can cause altered mental status. In early respiratory failure, you may have an SpO2 which is normal, but her PCO2 may be abnormal, and that explains her altered mental status. Even in acute severe asthma, sometimes if you did an ABG, you will find that the oxygen may be around 70% and carbon dioxide may be around 45. You should ask yourself, if the child is breathing fast, she should have had a carbon dioxide washout, and why is she having so much of carbon dioxide? And that's a clue indicating that this child is bordering on to respiratory failure. So from tomorrow, let us not do the sin of not estimating the carbon dioxide level when you have a child with neuromuscular problem. What all of us have to remember is that, like this girl, timely ventilatory support made this girl become normal. It could alter morbidity. It could avoid mortality in children. So a timely intervention looking at both oxygen and carbon dioxide levels makes a huge difference to optimal monitoring in children whom we treat. This could also be a problem in children who have spinal muscular atrophy and those other children with neuromuscular problems who may silently go into altered mental status because of carbon dioxide buildup, which is due to inadequate effort to breathe. Now, I would look at ethics, and this was a real case scenario. And this is something that you and me have to question ourselves, that in the days that we practice, are we following the most important aspect of practicing medicine, and that is ethics. This was a 10-year-old asthmatic child who was treated by his pediatrician for almost 3 years. And this time he came and the doctor diagnosed that he had an acute lobar pneumonia which caused the breathlessness and fever. Because this child had a classical signs of consolidation, the doctor admitted this child, put this child on IV antibiotics. Fortunately for the doctor, this child started showing response in a day. It was Diwali time. The father said, "Sir, I want to take my child home. It is Diwali time. Everybody else are bursting crackers. My child will get depressed. I want to take him home." On the second day, though the doctor insisted that this child needs IV medications for a longer time, the father did not heed to the doctor's advice. He took the child home and came back on the second day. That is one day after he took the child home. He was taking IV antibiotics elsewhere and the IV cannula got blocked. So he brought the child and said, "I don't want an IV cannula. I want to give oral medication." The doctor insisted because this was a lobar pneumonia, so this needs to be adequately treated, to insert the IV cannula on the other hand, which the parents did not agree at all. He took oral medication but came back the same evening as the child redeveloped fever. Then the doctor had to put in an IV catheter and start the IV medication. This child was lost for follow-up. They went to another corporate hospital, and guess what the doctor there committed on the treatment given. The other doctor, who himself was a pediatrician of great repute, said, "This is what will happen. Your doctor has changed 3 medicines in 3 days, and that is why your child has landed up with complication of pneumonia. 2 months later, the doctor who first treated the child met the parent, and as a courtesy, he asked the father, "How is your child?" He said he is doing fine. And then the doctor said, "Had you listened to our advice, your child would not have been bad." And can you think what the parent said? Categorically, without any hesitation, the parent said, "Sir, we are lay people. We don't know anything. You should have advised us very strictly not to go home and not to change to IV medications." Ladies and gentlemen, I am questioning myself. In spite of the doctor insisting on IV medication, it was the father who did not listen to the doctor. The father was an educated man. And the doctor who saw this child in the other hospital could not take a proper history and enjoyed in putting the other doctor down to say that your doctor has treated this child with 3 medicines in 3 days. Ladies and gentlemen, we should make it a point whenever we refer children to other hospitals to talk to the treating pediatrician there. On phone, tell the history, give a detailed history of what we have done, and make sure that either the pediatrician there or the junior doctors or the postgraduate students pass any derogatory statement on the pediatrician who has referred the child. Because when they go to another institution, the parents would relish the remarks made by the other doctor without even thinking about the sincerity of the doctor who treated the child. And the parents' response after 2 months was something that was an eye-opener. Even if you are right, even if you advise right, even if the parents don't follow you, ultimately the parents put the blame on the doctor. Now that brings to focus the importance of ethics, which we have to follow, which our co-professionals have to follow, and the ethics which parents have to follow, which not many of them think or do at this point in time. The way we can avoid the sins is to document what we have done and take the parents' signatures on the case paper to say that the decision to take the child home was the parents' decision. The decision to change to IV from IV to oral was the parents' decision. And that is and if you write a referral note, please write this in your referral note. Therefore, you have documented what has happened, and the parents will not be able to unnecessarily blame you if the child develops a complication. Ladies and gentlemen, how can we prevent these 5 sins? And that was the focus which my good friend Dr. Narayan Prasad Modi wanted me to share with you. The first way we can prevent a sin in clinical practice is to take a comprehensive history. It may take a little more time, but that is a time that is well spent. Doing a thorough clinical examination. How many times you would have seen a child with a viral upper respiratory tract infection? The parents come back to you on day 3 or day 4 to say that the child has not improved, and if you carefully do your auscultation, you will find a few crepes in either the right or the left lower lobe. So a thorough clinical examination, an unbiased clinical examination when the child comes to us for the second time with an open mind is something that will prevent the sin to a great extent. When we order investigations, we should be very prudent to order an investigation only when necessary. If you order an investigation which is not needed and you don't know how to interpret the results, which I have alluded to earlier, we will land ourselves up in bigger mess than what we were in before. So before you write your investigation, ask yourself or write it on your case paper, as Professor Amdekar said, your provisional diagnosis. If you write your provisional diagnosis as a viral respiratory tract infection, why will you need investigations? Because you know in a viral respiratory infection, your WBC counts will be normal, or there could be lymphocytosis. And the ordering of the Mantoux test unnecessarily in a child with lobar pneumonia, I have already alluded. Our treatment should be rational, and that will happen only if our diagnosis is rational. If you write a provisional diagnosis of viral respiratory infection, your hands, as Professor Amdekar said, will shiver if you have to write an antibiotic. If you write an unnecessary antibiotic and the child does not respond to it, you will not many times think of revising your diagnosis, and you will upgrade your antibiotic and miss the diagnosis. It has been rightly said that if you have used 2 antibiotics and the child is not better, 2 antibiotics in succession, then revise your diagnosis and don't write an other more powerful antibiotic. And finally, watchful and wise monitoring of the child is the most important necessity which will avoid sins. Children, unlike adults, can change in hours. I have had my intensive care friends confess to me that, sir, we just went out for food, and by the time we come back, this child has deteriorated, because children have very less physiological reserves, and a watchful and wise round the clock monitoring will reduce our sins to almost zero. This is a thing that is easily said than done. So we and our team should be always watchful and wise when we monitor children. And finally, as we enter our consulting room or our hospital, we should probably enter with the humility, telling ourselves that I treat, but he cures. With this attitude, I'm sure we will make very less sins or no sins in treating the children who come to us to get better. Thanks to the academic inputs from Dr. Mahesh Babu from Singapore, who has been my guide in quite a few of respiratory journey. Dr. Om Prakash, the senior pulmonologist of Bangalore. Professor S.D. Subbarao, who has been my guide and mentor. Dr. Indu Khosla from Mumbai, who shared a case. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is the last part of the seminar, and I would request as many people as to answer this. I have activated the link, so please answer this link. You can start your answers now. Yes, these are simple answers. You can just answer it. I am waiting for the answers. Open your mobile or click on your screen. Can you do it? And that has been my last slide. And if there are questions and if I know the answers to them, I will be most happy to answer. Thank you. I am grateful to the state branch of Orissa, my good friend Dr. Narayan Prasad Modi, my chairperson and co-chairperson, and all the members of the Orissa IAP and the IAP respiratory chapter for inviting me to share a few of the challenges that Dr. Modi had posed on me. Thank you for the opportunity and thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much, sir. IIP Odisha is deeply grateful to have taken us all through this enlightening journey through some simple but very, very common OP and IP cases. And I am sure everybody, everyone who has attended this webinar must have been on the edge of his seat watching this webinar. Thank you so much. We have few questions for you, sir. Can we just take up?
Oh, yes.
Question, sir?
Yes, please.
Sir, one esteemed attendee, he has asked, what are the clinical paths on diagnosis of different area of involvement of respiratory disorder, like airway, parenchyma, and interstitium?
Okay.
To name the few.
Okay.
Means clinical takeaway.
Okay. I think it's very easy. It's very important to know which part of the respiratory system is involved. Now, if you have the involvement of the airways, I start from the nose to the bronchi. The most important thing is the sound that the airways generate and the quality of the sound. If you have an upper airway sound, as a dictum, the sound is harsh. If you have a lower airway sound, except grunt, the sound is musical. Now, most upper airway sounds are present during the, they are harsh. It is like a cone. The respiratory tree is like a cone. As you go down, the sounds become less and less harsh. For example, if you have a nasal obstruction, you will have a sound like that is the nasal blocking sound. And all of you have heard this snoring sound. If somebody is snoring, the block is at the level of the nasopharynx and the oropharynx. If you have a stridor, the sound is at the level of the larynx. Now, if you have an inspiratory stridor, the level of obstruction is above the glottic laryngeal opening, that is above the vocal cords. If you have an expiratory stridor, it is below the level of the vocal cords. If you have an inspiratory stridor and an expiratory stridor, your lesion is in the subglottic area. Now, as you go down, if you have a brassy cough, then your lesion is at the level of the bronchus or the lower trachea. And if you have musical sounds, then your lesion is at the smaller airways. Having said that, there is something called a sonorous or a monophonic wheeze. And this sound is like, how will you recognize that? You keep your teeth at the level of the trachea and gradually shift your teeth to the lateral part of the chest. You will not find any difference in the quality of the sound at all. And that is called a monophonic wheeze. If you find a monophonic wheeze, then you are at the level of the trachea and the major bronchi, not the smaller bronchi. By and large, this sound is generated when they have tracheobronchomalacia lesions. And if you have a child who is breathing fast and who is making a sound like, that's a grunt. And grunt is a sign of pneumonia unless proved otherwise, though rarely grunt can occur in severe pleural disease and sometimes in cardiovascular diseases also. But for a practicing pediatrician, grunt is pneumonia unless proved otherwise. Now, grunt is a sign of a parenchymal involvement. Now, if you have a child who has chest pain, lateral chest pain, plus the child has breathlessness following the chest pain gets better, but the breathlessness gets worse, that child is developing a pleural effusion. Now, if you have to look at interstitium, the hallmark of an interstitial disease is dry cough, silent tachypnea, and a few creps here and there. All of you could do this experiment. Take your hand to your head, take your hair, and then rub it. You will find a sound, and that is called Velcro crepitations. So if you find fine crepitations in a child who is breathless, who is hypoxic, who has no much clinical signs, and your pulmonary functions tell you the child has a restrictive airway disease, you are dealing with an interstitial disease. Now again, the age of the child and the progression of the disease matters. For example, if you have a child who has stridor of long standing, that is laryngomalacia. If you have a child who has a stridor of acute onset, that is your acute laryngotracheobronchitis. If you have a child who has acute onset stridor, looks sick, not able to sit, puts its hand like this, sits like a tripod, that's your acute tracheitis or probably epiglottitis. So putting and the position of the neck of the child. If a child extends his neck, you probably have a retropharyngeal abscess. If the child is sick and turns the neck to one side, you may have a parapharyngeal abscess. So the age of the child, the presentation, the position of the child, the sounds he makes, all can be put together to arrive at a probable diagnosis.
Thank you, sir. It was really helpful and elaborative. Sir, you showed a case of 6-month-old who had recurrent otitis media and lower respiratory tract infection.
Yes.
One esteemed delegate has asked, could it be a case of cystic fibrosis as a differential diagnosis?
Yes, but in children with cystic fibrosis, they usually have tonsils, they usually have the thymus. If you have no thymus, no tonsil, then you will think of a primary immunodeficiency. But he is right in thinking of 3 or 4 possible diagnoses. One could be primary immune deficiency. Second could be cystic fibrosis. The third could be primary ciliary dyskinesia, because these are children who come with recurrent ear infections and sounds while breathing since birth. But in primary ciliary dyskinesia and cystic fibrosis, tonsils will be present and the thymus will be present. In primary immune deficiency, they may be absent.
Sometimes we are forced to write antibiotics by parents.
Yes.
What to do, sir? How not to be sinful in this situation?
Sir, the question is very simple. The way my teachers taught me was to explain to the parent on the first day itself. If you think that your diagnosis is a viral respiratory tract infection, it has a timetable. Fever comes down by 3 days, the cold comes down by 6th day, the cough will come down by 10 days. If the parents have this information shared on the first day of illness, then they will not ask us for an antibiotic. That is one. Number two, if you gave an antibiotic, you will not prevent a secondary bacterial infection. That is something the practicing pediatrician should have in mind. The third thing is, I always tell parents, see, if I give your child an antibiotic now, your child's immune system will not respond. Next time, I may have to give a more powerful antibiotic. The coming time, I may use a much stronger antibiotic. And would you like your child to develop like Chota Bheem? Or would you want your child to grow up with antibiotics like food? So most parents will say, no, sir, we want our child to grow up like Chota Bheem. The only difficulty is when they come for the second time for a review, maybe you should not charge them. That is likely makes them more comfortable and they will listen to us. And once or twice, if they know that the child responded without an antibiotic, they will tell other parents also, go to this doctor, he will cure your child without antibiotics. So our practice also would improve and rational antibiotic therapy would continue. But the most important aspect, Dr. Modi, is to convince myself that this child will do better without an antibiotic and all other things will follow.
Sir, you are true in saying that it's actually more challenging to convince ourselves, we pediatricians,
Yes.
rather than the parents.
Yes,
True, sir.
100%.
True. Sir, another question has come. When and how to use adrenaline as a nebulization in bronchiolitis? Is it indicated and when?
Okay. Now, adrenaline in respiratory medicine is used only in two situations. One, when you have an acute croup, there you use undiluted adrenaline. Maximum is 3 to 5 ml depending on the body weight. The other situation is where you use it in bronchiolitis because adrenaline is likely to reduce the bronchial edema and then make the child better. Here you use 0.2 ml per kg body weight. You can dilute it either in saline and nebulize it once in 3 to 4 hours. And it can be given for 24 to 48 hours. But if the child is not showing response to adrenaline within 24 hours, probably it may not be of help. The only other thing is if you are using adrenaline, then there is no need to use a beta-2 agonist along with adrenaline. People have tried adrenaline with 3% saline, but the results have been equivocal because 3% saline was also a medication which was advocated in bronchiolitis. So use it either with normal saline or with 3% saline.
Sir, actually, I have used adrenaline in nebulization in 2 asthma cases and they responded well. After all the initial recommendation for asthma treatment, when they didn't respond, I have used till now in 2 cases and they responded well. What's your take on that?
Sir, I have not used adrenaline nebulization, but in times of distress, particularly if there was no oxygen in a sick child, I have used subcutaneous adrenaline, which was the treatment of choice in the exter years. Now, I am not surprised by your response because adrenaline contains what beta-2 agonists have. It has more than what they have. So I am not surprised. Only thing is we need to watch the child for tachycardia, which is much more common with adrenaline than with beta-2 agonists.
Sir, one common question that in clinical practice, when to decide that we should give steroid in a case of cough, which cough and when?
Okay.
Is there any role of steroid?
Okay. Role of steroids in treating cough.
Yeah.
Right. Now, by and large, steroids do not have a place in treating unqualified cough. Let us make it very clear. Cough could be due to many reasons. For example, it could be to a postnasal drip, it could be following a viral LRI, it could follow a pneumonia. Now, the only place where steroids have a role is in unresolved allergic or bronchospastic cough, which does not respond to optimal dose of beta-2 agonist. Let me say the child is a wheezer, he is an asthmatic. You have used bronchodilators, you are sure about your diagnosis. Only there is a role for using a very short course of oral corticosteroids, and nowhere else is steroids indicated for the treatment of unqualified cough. I would probably add to say that if you have not made your diagnosis and used steroids, you may worsen the situation if there is a smoldering infection, or if the cough is due to a condition like pertussis, you might worsen the situation. So I think we have to be very careful when we use steroids for cough.
Good, sir. Sir, one dear postgraduate has asked, we usually overtreat the child for the fear of losing him.
Yes.
Practice. How to approach the parent.
Like, see, this over treatment, to the best of my knowledge, comes when the child is very sick and he is in the ICU. Because then you are pushed to the wall. If you are treating a child in your office, over treatment is something that nobody should do. Because you have time. You have time. The most important thing, let me share my personal experiences. See, I don't hesitate to open the textbook to look at the drug doses in front of the patient. Many times they ask me, sir, you read the book? I say, I am not God. I can be wrong in my drug doses. I don't want to punish your child. So I don't mind looking at the book, looking at the drug doses before I prescribe. And parents develop a lot of respect for you. Number two, you should have been trained by a teacher who himself is practicing rational antibiotic therapy. That is the most important requisite. Because I was trained by my teacher, Professor Jairam, who himself was a rational antibiotic prescriber. And then listening to dons like Professor Amdekar, Dr. Suhas Prabhu, quite a Vijay Yavale, that will give you more confidence to say, yes, it can work. So you have to, they say you are known by the company you keep. So keep company and listen to these people and it will convince. I think it is like learning swimming. You get into water, you are afraid. Once you learn the first stroke and you know you can swim, then life is a pleasure. The same way, the first or second patient, you may have tension. But once you win over the first and second patient, then your confidence in yourself will build up.
Sir, another question has come. What are rattles and what is the longevity?
What are?
Rattles.
No, I didn't
get
get you.
What is the longevity? Respiratory sound. And what is the longevity? How we can assess from the staying power of rattles in a respiratory illness?
Rashes.
How we can prognosticate?
No, I didn't get your question, Dr. Modi.
What are rattles?
Oh, rattle. Yeah, I got it. Now, rattle is a rough respiratory sound. Now, that can occur in severe respiratory problems when the child is sick and the child is breathing due to a lot of secretions. They say that it is like a death rattle. So, a rattle is a rough respiratory sound. By and large, it is because of secretions. More the secretions, more this sound. So, you will probably do measures or take measures to reduce the secretions by posturing, by giving medications that would reduce the secretion. Like in a child with asthma, you would probably combine ipratropium for a while, or you might use cystic fibrosis. You might use acetylcysteine in cystic fibrosis like that. Rattle indicates a pathology.
Sir, our past president, Honorable Pramod Jog sir, he has congratulated you for removing hypoxia of ignorance.
My thanks to him and my pranams to him.
And our esteemed president, Odisha IAP State Chapter, he has congratulated for this wonderful webinar that you have presented to VODS.
My pleasure, sir. And thanks to you. You are responsible for it.
No, sir, it's all yours. So,
no, you gave me this challenging topic, Dr. Modi.
So, thank you, sir. We are almost done. Rest of the questions were very common, already answered many times. So, we are not taking up because of lack of time. I will now hand over the opportunity to Dr. Devendra Sethi for the Thanksgiving, and we will be done with that. Over to Dr. Sethi. Dr. Sethi.
Where is Dr. Sethi gone?
Okay, sir. Thank you, Dr. Modi, sir, for nicely moderating the session. And thank you, Dr. Nagabhushan, sir, for accepting our invitation and nicely presenting and reminding us what are the 5 sins we are always making in clinical practice. And we'll try that in medical, we have 5 difference. We must take proper history and proper clinical examination. Then 90% of the problems will be solved. There is no need of complete investigation or extensive investigations. And after that, we have to wait and we have to be patient to treat our patient. And thank you again. And thank you, Dr. B.K. Bhaiya, sir, for chairing the session, and Dr. Sushruth Bhai for chairing the co-chairperson. And again, I thank you, Dr. our State President, Dr. Prasanna Kumar Sahu, sir, plus arranging and helping us in this session, plus attending the webinar. And also thank you all the attendees, almost 90 plus attendees are there, and with interactive sessions. And also thank you lastly the ClearNet session, Dr. Sansita and Janvi. No?
Mrs.
Okay, next
Mukherjee.
now.
Planet team.
Yes, sir. This is Joyita, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very
Sorry,
much,
no?
sir.
Welcome.
It's okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
And with this, we conclude this session. And again, thank you all of you, sir.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, sir. Thank you.
Hi dear. Yeah.